In the vast steppes of northeastern Iran, where the Kapet Dag Mountains cast long shadows across the ancient landscape, a nomadic people known as the Parthian began their transformation from wandering horsemen into the architects of one of history's most enduring empires. The Parthian Empire, which would eventually stretch from the Euphrates River in the west to the Indus River in the east, emerged not through sudden conquest, but through a gradual process of cultural synthesis, political adaptation, and military innovation that would define the ancient world for nearly 5 centuries. Archaeological evidence from sites like Nisa, the spiritual heart of early Parthian civilization, reveals a complex society that successfully bridged the gap between nomadic traditions and settled imperial administration, creating a unique hybrid culture that combined Hellenistic artistic traditions with Iranian religious beliefs, Greek administrative practices with nomadic military tactics, and Mediterranean commercial networks with Central Asian trade routes. The material culture uncovered at Nisa, including intricately carved ivory rhytons decorated with scenes from Greek mythology, alongside distinctly Iranian fire altars and burial practices, demonstrates the sophisticated cultural fusion that would become the hallmark of Parthian civilization. Excavations conducted by Soviet archaeologists in the 1940s and 1950s, followed by more recent international teams, have revealed extensive palace complexes, treasury buildings filled with thousands of ostraca documenting wine production and administrative activities, and religious structures that show the gradual evolution from pure Zoroastrianism to a syncretic belief system incorporating Greek, Mesopotamian, and Central Asian elements. The stratigraphy at Nisa clearly shows the transition from simple nomadic encampments of the 3rd century BCE to the elaborate urban complexes of the 1st century CE, with each archaeological layer revealing new aspects of Parthian adaptation and innovation. The pottery assemblages from these excavations show a remarkable evolution from purely functional nomadic ceramics to highly decorated vessels combining Greek forms with Iranian decorative motifs, while metallurgical analysis of weapons and jewelry reveals the sophisticated techniques that Parthian craftsmen developed to work with iron, bronze, gold, and silver obtained through their extensive trade networks. The Parthian themselves, according to classical sources like Strabo and Justin, were originally one of the 3 main tribes of the Dahi Confederation, a group of nomadic peoples who inhabited the region between the Caspian Sea and the Amu Darya River, known to the Greeks as the Oxus. These nomadic origins would profoundly influence Parthian military organization, with their legendary heavy cavalry, the cataphracts, representing a synthesis of nomadic horsemanship with Hellenistic military technology, while their famous Parthian shot, the ability to fire arrows accurately while retreating on horseback, became one of the most feared tactical maneuvers in the ancient world. The archaeological record from sites across the Parthian Empire reveals the extent to which these nomadic military traditions were formalized and systematized, with excavations at Dura Europos revealing detailed military equipment including scale armor, composite bows, and the distinctive conical helmets that became synonymous with Parthian heavy cavalry. The transformation of the Parthian from nomadic tribe to imperial power began in the middle of the 3rd century BCE, when the chaos following Alexander the Great's death and the subsequent wars of succession created opportunities for ambitious leaders to carve out independent territories from the fragmenting Seleucid Empire. The Seleucids, despite their Greek origins and Hellenistic cultural preferences, had been forced to adopt many Persian administrative and cultural practices in order to govern their vast and diverse territories, creating a hybrid Greco-Iranian civilization that would serve as a crucial foundation for later Parthian development. Archaeological evidence from Seleucid sites shows the gradual ironization of Greek cultural forms, with Greek artistic styles being modified to incorporate Iranian themes and religious imagery, Greek architectural forms being adapted to suit Iranian climatic and cultural preferences, and Greek administrative practices being combined with traditional Persian methods of provincial government. The material culture of the late Seleucid period, as revealed through excavations at sites like Seleucia on the Tigris and Ai Khanum, demonstrates a sophisticated fusion of Greek and Iranian elements that would provide the cultural template for later Parthian synthesis. Coins from the late Seleucid period show increasingly Iranian iconography alongside traditional Greek symbols, while inscriptions reveal the growing use of Aramaic and local Iranian languages alongside Greek for administrative purposes. The weakness of Seleucid control in the eastern provinces, combined with a traditional Iranian preference for decentralized government and local autonomy, created ideal conditions for the emergence of independent Iranian dynasties. The Parthian conquest of these territories, therefore, was not so much a foreign invasion as it was a native Iranian reassertion of political control over traditionally Iranian lands that had been temporarily incorporated into the Hellenistic world system. This understanding is crucial to comprehending the remarkable speed with which Parthian rule was accepted by local populations and the ease with which Parthian administrators were able to integrate existing governmental, economic, and cultural institutions into their expanding empire. The archaeological evidence clearly shows continuity in settlement patterns, religious practices, and material culture across the Seleucid Parthian transition, suggesting that for most inhabitants of the eastern Iranian plateau, the Parthian conquest represented not a revolutionary change, but rather a return to more traditional forms of political and cultural organization. Arsaces I, the legendary founder of the Parthian dynasty, whose exact historical identity remains a subject of scholarly debate, began the Parthian expansion around 247 BCE by establishing control over the satrapies of Parthia and Hyrcania, using the weakness of the Seleucid king Antiochus II, who was preoccupied with wars against Ptolemaic Egypt, to establish an independent kingdom in the northeastern Iranian plateau. The name Arsaces, which became the dynastic title of all subsequent Parthian kings, may have been derived from the Iranian word Arshaka, meaning hero or man, reflecting the importance of personal valor and military prowess in Parthian political culture. Archaeological evidence from the earliest Parthian sites suggests that Arsaces I and his immediate successors maintained many aspects of nomadic political organization, with power being distributed among various clan leaders and military commanders rather than being concentrated in a centralized bureaucracy. Excavations at early Parthian sites show relatively simple architectural forms and material culture that closely resembled contemporary nomadic assemblages from the Central Asian steppes, suggesting that the early Parthian kings maintained strong connections to their nomadic origins even as they began to establish permanent settlements and administrative centers. The transition from nomadic confederation to settled empire was gradual and carefully managed, with each generation of Parthian rulers adding new elements of imperial organization while maintaining the flexibility and adaptability that had made their nomadic ancestors so successful. Coins from the early Parthian period show a fascinating evolution in royal imagery, beginning with simple designs that emphasize the king's military prowess and nomadic heritage, gradually incorporating Greek artistic elements and royal iconography, and eventually developing a distinctive Parthian style that combined Iranian religious symbolism with Hellenistic artistic techniques. The royal mint at Nisa produced some of the finest examples of early Parthian coinage, with skilled Greek artisans working under Iranian supervision to create coins that served both as currency and as political propaganda, spreading images of Parthian royal power throughout the empire's extensive trade networks. Isotope analysis of silver used in these early coins reveals that Parthian rulers had access to silver sources throughout the Iranian plateau and Central Asia, demonstrating the extent of their trade networks and their ability to mobilize economic resources across vast distances. The reign of Arsacid I was followed by a period of consolidation under his successor, traditionally known as Arsacid II, who may have been the same person as Mithridates I mentioned in classical sources. The confusion in classical accounts regarding early Parthian rulers reflects both the deliberate secrecy that Parthian kings maintained regarding their internal affairs and the limited access that Greek and Roman writers had to reliable information about Parthian political organization. Archaeological evidence suggests that the early Parthian state was organized along tribal lines, with various clan leaders maintaining considerable autonomy while acknowledging the overall authority of the Arsacid dynasty. This decentralized political structure, which combined elements of nomadic confederation with aspects of Iranian imperial tradition, would remain a characteristic feature of Parthian government throughout the empire's history and would prove to be both a source of strength, allowing for flexible response to local conditions and rapid mobilization of military resources, and a potential weakness, creating opportunities for internal rebellion and making coordinated responses to external threats more difficult. The material culture of the early Parthian period shows clear evidence of this political decentralization, with regional variations in pottery styles, burial practices, and architectural forms reflecting the considerable autonomy that local leaders maintained within the broader Parthian system. Excavations at sites throughout the early Parthian territories reveal a patchwork of local traditions and customs, unified by shared political allegiance to the Arsacid dynasty and common participation in the emerging Parthian economic and cultural system. The Parthian approach to government, which emphasized adaptation to local conditions and incorporation of existing institutions rather than imposition of uniform imperial standards, would prove remarkably successful in creating loyalty among diverse populations and maintaining political stability across vast territories and diverse cultural landscapes. The expansion of Parthian power beyond its original northeastern Iranian homeland began in earnest during the reign of Mithridates I, who ruled from approximately 171 to 138 BCE, and transformed the Parthian kingdom from a regional power into a major empire capable of challenging Roman dominance in the eastern Mediterranean. Archaeological evidence from sites across Iran, Mesopotamia, and Central Asia reveals the systematic nature of Mithridates I's conquests and the sophisticated administrative apparatus that he developed to govern his rapidly expanding territories. Excavations at Ctesiphon, which would eventually become the Parthian capital, show the earliest phases of construction dating to this period, with massive fortification walls and palace complexes that demonstrate the scale of Parthian ambition and the resources available to support imperial expansion. The architectural remains at Ctesiphon reveal a fascinating synthesis of Iranian, Mesopotamian, and Hellenistic building traditions, with the famous Carrhae, although built centuries later, representing the culmination of architectural developments that began during Mithridates I's reign. The Iwan, a distinctive architectural form consisting of a large rectangular hall open on one side and covered by a barrel vault, became a characteristic feature of Parthian architecture and represents one of the most important architectural innovations to emerge from the Iranian cultural sphere. Archaeological analysis of early Iwan construction at Parthian sites shows the sophisticated engineering techniques that Parthian builders developed, including advanced methods for constructing large-scale barrel vaults using locally available materials and techniques adapted from both nomadic and settled architectural traditions. The widespread adoption of the Iwan form throughout Parthian territories demonstrates the empire's success in developing a distinctive architectural vocabulary that could be adapted to different climatic conditions, available materials, and local building traditions while maintaining a consistent imperial identity. Mithridates I's conquest of Media around 148 BCE brought the Parthians into control of one of the most economically and strategically important regions of the Iranian plateau, providing access to major trade routes connecting Central Asia with Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean world, as well as control over rich agricultural lands and important mining regions that would provide the economic foundation for further expansion. The archaeological record from Median sites shows a smooth transition from Seleucid to Parthian rule, with continuity in settlement patterns, economic activities, and cultural practices suggesting that local populations readily accepted Parthian authority. Excavations at Ecbatana, the ancient Median capital, reveal extensive Parthian building programs that enhanced and expanded existing Seleucid structures rather than replacing them wholesale, demonstrating the Parthian preference for adaptation and synthesis rather than revolutionary change. The material culture from Ecbatana during the early Parthian period shows increasing Iranian influence in artistic styles and religious practices, but also continued Greek and Hellenistic elements, reflecting the cosmopolitan nature of Parthian civilization and its ability to incorporate diverse cultural traditions into a coherent imperial system. Coins minted at Ecbatana during Mithridates I's reign show the development of distinctive Parthian royal iconography, with the king depicted wearing the distinctive soft cap, or tiara, that became the standard headgear of Parthian royalty, while reverse designs often featured Iranian religious symbols like fire altars alongside Greek deities and mythological scenes. The conquest of Mesopotamia, culminating in the capture of Seleucia the Tigris around 141 BCE, marked the transformation of Parthia from a regional Iranian kingdom into a major world power capable of directly challenging Roman expansion in the east. Seleucia the Tigris, one of the largest cities in the ancient world with a population estimated at over 400,000 inhabitants, provided the Parthians with a major urban center, extensive commercial networks, and access to the sophisticated administrative and cultural traditions of Hellenistic civilization. Archaeological excavations at Seleucia have revealed the extensive modifications and improvements that Parthian rulers made to the city's infrastructure, including new residential districts, expanded market areas, improved harbor facilities, and impressive public buildings that demonstrated Parthian commitment to urban development and their ability to manage large-scale construction projects. The pottery assemblages from Parthian levels at Seleucia show the continued production of traditional Greek forms alongside new Iranian-influenced designs, while numismatic evidence reveals the gradual replacement of Seleucid currency with Parthian coins bearing increasingly Iranian iconography and inscriptions. The integration of Seleucia into the Parthian Empire demonstrates the remarkable adaptability of Parthian institutions and their ability to govern diverse populations with different cultural backgrounds and economic interests. Mithridates I's establishment of a Parthian presence at Seleucia also brought the empire into direct contact with Roman commercial and political interests in Mesopotamia, setting the stage for the centuries of conflict that would define Parthian-Roman relations and ultimately contribute to the weakening of both empires. The archaeological evidence from sites throughout Mesopotamia shows that Parthian rule brought increased economic prosperity and cultural vitality. With new construction projects, expanded trade networks, and flourishing artistic production demonstrating the positive effects of incorporation into the Parthian imperial system. Excavations at Babylon, which remained an important religious and cultural center under Parthian rule, reveal continued temple construction and maintenance, suggesting that Parthian rulers followed traditional Iranian policies of religious tolerance and support for local customs and institutions. The cuneiform tablets from Parthian period Babylon document the continued use of traditional Mesopotamian legal and commercial practices alongside new Parthian administrative procedures, creating a hybrid system that preserved local traditions while integrating them into the broader imperial framework. The success of Parthian rule in Mesopotamia was largely due to their willingness to work with existing elites and institutions rather than imposing entirely new systems of government, a policy that enabled them to maintain control over these rich and populous territories with relatively small numbers of Iranian administrators and military garrisons. The reign of Mithridates I also saw significant expansion of Parthian influence in Central Asia, with archaeological evidence suggesting Parthian control or influence extending as far east as Bactria and Sogdiana. Excavations at sites along the ancient Silk Road routes reveal increasing numbers of Parthian coins and artifacts during this period, demonstrating the expansion of Parthian commercial and political networks into the heart of Central Asia. The Parthian approach to controlling these distant territories relied heavily on alliance with local rulers and integration into existing trade networks rather than direct military occupation, a strategy that proved both economical and effective in maintaining Parthian influence across vast distances. The material culture from Central Asian sites shows clear evidence of Parthian cultural influence, with local artistic traditions incorporating Iranian motifs and religious symbols, while maintaining their own distinctive characteristics. This cultural synthesis created a unique Central Asian variant of Parthian civilization that would play an important role in transmitting Iranian cultural influences eastward to China and India. Mithridates I's military innovations, building on the traditional nomadic strengths of Parthian forces, created a military system that combined the mobility and archery skills of steppe warriors with the heavy cavalry and siege techniques of settled civilizations. Archaeological evidence from military sites throughout the Parthian Empire reveals the sophisticated equipment and tactics that Parthian armies employed, including the famous cataphracts or heavily armored cavalry that became the backbone of Parthian military power. Excavations at Dura-Europos have uncovered remarkably preserved examples of Parthian military equipment, including scale armor made from iron and bronze scales sewn onto leather backing, conical helmets designed to deflect arrows and sword blows, and the long lances contis that cataphracts used in their devastating charges against enemy infantry formations. The composite bows used by Parthian horse archers, constructed from horn, wood, and sinew using techniques perfected over centuries of nomadic warfare, were capable of penetrating most contemporary armor at ranges of up to 200 meters, making Parthian mounted archers among the most formidable warriors in the ancient world. The famous Parthian shot, executed by mounted archers who could accurately shoot arrows while retreating at full gallop, required years of training and represented the pinnacle of nomadic military technique adapted to imperial warfare. Archaeological analysis of arrowheads found at battle sites throughout the Parthian Empire reveals the sophisticated metallurgical techniques used in their manufacture, with different types of points designed for specific tactical situations and enemy armor types. The integration of heavy and light cavalry forces, supported by infantry units equipped with traditional Iranian weapons and armor, created a balanced military system capable of fighting effectively in diverse terrains and against various enemy tactics. The golden age of Parthian civilization reached its zenith during the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE, as successive Arsacid rulers consolidated their empire's territorial gains and developed the sophisticated cultural synthesis that would define Parthian identity for generations to come. Archaeological evidence from this period reveals an unprecedented flowering of artistic achievement, architectural innovation, and commercial prosperity that demonstrates the successful maturation of Parthian imperial institutions and the effective integration of diverse cultural traditions into a coherent civilizational framework. Excavations at major Parthian sites like Ctesiphon, Nisa, Hatra, and Palmyra have uncovered spectacular examples of Parthian art and architecture that showcase the empire's ability to create original cultural forms while drawing inspiration from Greek, Iranian, Mesopotamian, and Central Asian traditions. The palace complexes at Ctesiphon, although known primarily through later Islamic period reconstructions and limited archaeological remains, represented one of the greatest architectural achievements of the ancient world, with massive audience halls, elaborate gardens, and sophisticated mechanical devices that amazed foreign visitors and demonstrated the technical capabilities of Parthian engineers and craftsmen. The development of distinctively Parthian artistic styles during this period is clearly visible in the archaeological record, with sculptural programs at sites like Behistun and Hatra showing the evolution of a unique iconographic vocabulary that combined Iranian royal and religious symbols with Hellenistic naturalistic techniques and Mesopotamian narrative traditions. The rock reliefs at Behistun, created during the reign of Mithridates II around 100 BCE, represent some of the finest examples of Parthian royal art, with the king depicted receiving homage from various provincial governors and foreign dignitaries in a composition that draws on Achaemenid Persian precedents, while incorporating distinctively Parthian elements of costume, gesture, and religious symbolism. The technical quality of these reliefs, with their sophisticated use of multiple figure planes, naturalistic treatment of human and animal forms, and integration of inscriptions in multiple languages, demonstrates the high level of artistic achievement that Parthian court workshops had attained by this period. The silverwork and metalwork from Parthian contexts, including the spectacular rhytons and vessels found at Nisa, showcase the technical mastery that Parthian craftsmen achieved in working precious metals, with complex repoussé designs, intricate engraving, and sophisticated casting techniques that rival the finest productions of any ancient civilization. The iconographic programs on these luxury objects reveal the cosmopolitan nature of Parthian court culture, with Greek mythological scenes, Iranian religious symbols, and Central Asian animal motifs combined in compositions that demonstrate the successful synthesis of diverse cultural traditions. Isotopic analysis of the gold and silver used in these objects reveals trade networks extending from the Altai Mountains in Central Asia to the gold mines of Anatolia, demonstrating the extent of Parthian commercial connections and their ability to mobilize luxury resources from across the known world. The religious developments during the Parthian Golden Age reflect the empire's success in creating a syncretic spiritual system that incorporated elements from all the major religious traditions represented within their territories. Archaeological evidence from religious sites throughout the empire shows the coexistence of Zoroastrian fire temples, Greek mystery cults, Mesopotamian astral religions, and various local traditions, all operating within a framework of imperial tolerance and mutual influence. The fire temples at Nisa and other Parthian sites reveal sophisticated architectural forms adapted to Zoroastrian ritual requirements, with specialized chambers for maintaining sacred fires, areas for ritual purification, and spaces for communal worship that demonstrate the continued importance of traditional Iranian religious practices within Parthian civilization. At the same time, excavations at sites like Dura-Europos and Hatra reveal the presence of temples dedicated to Greek deities, Mesopotamian gods, and various syncretistic divine figures that combined attributes from multiple religious traditions. The religious art from these sites shows remarkable creativity in developing new iconographic forms that could express complex theological concepts drawn from multiple traditions, with divine figures depicted using artistic conventions that would be recognizable to worshippers from different cultural backgrounds. The development of Mithraism, although its precise relationship to Iranian religious traditions remains controversial among scholars, appears to have been influenced by Parthian religious concepts and may have originated within territories under Parthian control. The mystery religions that flourished throughout the Parthian Empire provided spiritual frameworks for the cosmopolitan populations of major commercial centers, offering personal salvation and community identity to merchants, craftsmen, and other groups whose lives were shaped by the empire's extensive trade networks. The architectural remains of Mithraea, synagogues, Christian churches, and various other religious structures found at Parthian sites demonstrate the religious diversity that characterized the empire and the pragmatic tolerance that enabled different communities to coexist peacefully within the Parthian system. The economic prosperity of the Parthian Golden Age is clearly visible in the archaeological record, with evidence of expanded urban centers, increased commercial activity, and sophisticated manufacturing operations throughout the empire's territories. Excavations at Seleucia on the Tigris reveal extensive commercial districts with specialized workshops for pottery production, metalworking, textile manufacture, and other crafts that supplied both local markets and long-distance trade networks. The pottery assemblages from Parthian commercial contexts show both mass production techniques for everyday items and highly specialized production of luxury ceramics for elite consumption, demonstrating the sophisticated market economy that had developed within the empire. The glass industry, which reached new levels of technical achievement during the Parthian period, produced both functional vessels for daily use and elaborate decorative objects that were traded throughout the ancient world. Archaeological analysis of glass artifacts from Parthian sites reveals advanced production techniques including mold blowing, cutting, and engraving that created products competitive with the finest Mediterranean glass industries. The textile industry, although poorly preserved in the archaeological record due to the perishable nature of organic materials, is documented through literary sources and artistic representations that describe the fine silks, wools, and other luxury fabrics produced in Parthian territories. The famous Parthian leatherwork, including the elaborately decorated horse trappings and personal equipment found at various sites, demonstrates the high quality of Parthian craftsmanship and the sophisticated techniques used in processing animal hides. The commercial networks that connected Parthian territories to markets throughout the ancient world are documented through the distribution patterns of Parthian coins, which have been found from Britain to China, and through the presence of Parthian goods at sites throughout the Mediterranean, Central Asia, and South Asia. The Silk Road trade routes that passed through Parthian territories brought enormous wealth to the empire through customs duties, protection fees, and the profits from serving as intermediaries between Chinese and Mediterranean markets. Archaeological evidence from sites along these trade routes shows the development of sophisticated infrastructure, including caravanserais, way stations, and fortified settlements that facilitated long-distance commerce and provided security for merchant caravans. The monetary system developed by Parthian rulers to facilitate this commerce demonstrates their understanding of economic principles and their ability to maintain stable currency values across vast territories and extended time periods. Parthian coins from the Golden Age period show consistent weight standards, high silver content, and sophisticated artistic designs that made them widely accepted throughout the ancient world and helped establish the Parthian dram as an international medium of exchange. The administrative innovations of the Parthian Golden Age reflected the empire's success in developing governmental institutions capable of managing complex multi-ethnic territories while maintaining the flexibility and adaptability that had characterized earlier Parthian political organization. Archaeological evidence from administrative centers throughout the empire reveals the development of sophisticated record-keeping systems, standardized measurement systems, and coordinated tax collection procedures that enabled effective imperial administration while respecting local autonomy and traditional practices. The ostraca from Nisa, numbering in the thousands, provide detailed documentation of Parthian administrative practices, including wine production management, tax collection procedures, and personnel records that reveal the bureaucratic sophistication of Parthian government. These documents, written primarily in Aramaic, but also including Greek and Parthian language texts, demonstrate the multilingual nature of Parthian administration and the empire's ability to accommodate different linguistic and cultural groups within a unified governmental system. The military organization that sustained Parthian power during their Golden Age represented one of the most sophisticated and effective fighting forces in the ancient world, combining traditional nomadic tactics with innovations in heavy cavalry warfare that would influence military development throughout Eurasia for centuries to come. Archaeological evidence from military installations throughout the Parthian Empire, including fortified cities, frontier posts, and training facilities, reveals the systematic approach that Parthian commanders took to organizing, equipping, and deploying their armed forces. Excavations at Merv, one of the most important Parthian military centers, have uncovered extensive barracks complexes, weapons workshops, and horse training facilities that demonstrate the scale and sophistication of Parthian military infrastructure. The fortification systems at Merv, with their multiple defensive walls, sophisticated gate complexes, and integrated artillery positions, represent the culmination of centuries of military engineering experience and demonstrate Parthian mastery of both offensive and defensive warfare techniques. The weapons workshops at Merv and other military centers produced the specialized equipment that made Parthian armies so effective, including the composite bows that were the primary weapon of Parthian horse archers, the long lances used by cataphract cavalry, and the scale armor that protected both horses and riders in heavy cavalry units. Archaeological analysis of these weapons reveals the sophisticated metallurgical techniques that Parthian armorers employed, including specialized heat treatment processes for iron and steel, advanced techniques for working bronze and other alloys, and complex manufacturing procedures for creating the laminated construction of composite bows. The horse breeding programs that supported Parthian cavalry operations are documented through archaeological remains of stables and training facilities, as well as through artistic representations that show the distinctive characteristics of Parthian war horses. The Nisaean horses, bred in the fertile pastures of Media and renowned throughout the ancient world for their size, speed, and endurance, formed the foundation of Parthian military superiority, and were so highly prized that they became diplomatic gifts exchanged between Parthian kings and foreign rulers. Archaeological evidence suggests that Parthian horse breeding programs involved careful selection for specific military characteristics, with different breeds developed for different tactical roles, including light cavalry scouting, heavy cavalry shock action, and logistic support. The training of Parthian cavalry forces represented a lifetime commitment that began in childhood and continued throughout a warrior's active military career, with archaeological evidence from training facilities showing the sophisticated equipment and techniques used to develop the skills necessary for effective mounted warfare. The famous Parthian shot, which required the ability to accurately shoot arrows while mounted on a galloping horse and facing backwards, was just one element of a comprehensive training program that included weapon handling, horsemanship, tactical formations, and coordination with other military units. The cataphract forces that formed the elite core of Parthian armies represented a revolutionary development in heavy cavalry warfare, with both horse and rider protected by sophisticated armor systems that provided protection against contemporary weapons while maintaining sufficient mobility for effective battlefield maneuvers. Archaeological examples of cataphract equipment, primarily from Duri Ropos but also from other sites throughout the empire, reveal the advanced metallurgical and manufacturing techniques required to produce effective scale armor, chainmail, and plate armor elements. The scale armor used by Parthian cataphracts consisted of small metal plates sewn onto leather backing in overlapping patterns that provided flexible protection against arrows, spears, and sword cuts while allowing the freedom of movement necessary for mounted combat. The conical helmets worn by Parthian heavy cavalry, with their distinctive neck guards and face protection, were designed to deflect blows while providing adequate vision and hearing for battlefield communication. The long lances or contis used by cataphracts, sometimes reaching lengths of 4 meters, required specialized training and tactical formations to use effectively, and represented a significant innovation in cavalry warfare techniques. The coordination between cataphract heavy cavalry and horse archer light cavalry forces created a combined arms system that could adapt to different battlefield conditions and enemy tactics, with light cavalry providing reconnaissance, harassment, and pursuit capabilities, while heavy cavalry delivered decisive shock action against enemy formations. The infantry forces that supported Parthian cavalry operations, although less famous than their mounted counterparts, played crucial roles in siege warfare, defensive operations, and garrison duties throughout the empire. Archaeological evidence from infantry equipment reveals the use of traditional Iranian weapons, including composite bows, spears, swords, and axes, combined with armor systems adapted from various cultural traditions represented within the empire. The siege warfare capabilities developed by Parthian armies enabled them to conduct complex military operations against fortified cities and demonstrated their mastery of engineering techniques, including catapults, battering rams, siege towers, and undermining operations. The fortification systems that Parthian engineers developed for their own defensive purposes, visible at sites throughout the empire, show sophisticated understanding of military architecture, including advanced works, coordinated defensive positions, and integrated artillery placements. The logistic systems that supported Parthian military operations across the vast distances of their empire required careful planning and coordination, with archaeological evidence revealing networks of supply depots, transportation facilities, and communication systems that enabled rapid deployment of forces and sustained military campaigns far from base territories. The military roads that connected major Parthian centers, although less famous than Roman road systems, represented significant engineering achievements and enabled rapid movement of troops, supplies, and communications throughout the empire. The signal systems used for military communication, including beacon fires and messenger networks, enabled Parthian commanders to coordinate operations across vast distances and respond quickly to threats or opportunities. The military colonies established throughout Parthian territories served multiple functions, including frontier defense, population settlement, and cultural integration, with archaeological evidence revealing the systematic planning that went into selecting sites, designing settlements, and organizing community life in these strategic locations. The veteran settlement programs that provided land grants to retired soldiers helped create loyal populations in frontier regions, while providing experienced military leadership for local defense forces. The integration of local military traditions and fighting techniques into Parthian armies enabled them to adapt to different environmental conditions and enemy capabilities, while maintaining overall tactical coherence and command structure. Archaeological evidence from the eastern provinces shows the incorporation of Central Asian archery techniques, Indian elephant warfare elements, and various specialized regional weapons and tactics into the broader Parthian military system. The naval capabilities developed by Parthian forces for operations in the Persian Gulf and other maritime theaters, although limited compared to their land-based military strength, enabled them to control important sea routes and conduct amphibious operations when necessary. The military alliances that Parthian rulers negotiated with various nomadic tribes and settled kingdoms provided additional military resources, while extending Parthian influence beyond the direct territorial control of the empire, creating a buffer zone system that provided strategic depth and early warning of potential threats. The complex relationship between the Parthian Empire and Rome, which dominated international politics for over 2 centuries and profoundly influenced the development of both civilizations, began as a result of conflicting imperial ambitions in the eastern Mediterranean and Mesopotamia, but evolved into a sophisticated diplomatic system punctuated by periodic military conflicts that demonstrated both the strengths and limitations of ancient imperial power. Archaeological evidence from sites throughout the borderlands between the 2 empires reveals the extensive fortification systems, diplomatic facilities, and commercial installations that developed to manage this complex relationship. Excavations at Dura-Europos, which served as a crucial frontier city and changed hands between Parthian and Roman control multiple times, provide detailed insight into the practical effects of this great power rivalry on local populations and regional development. The multilingual inscriptions found at Dura-Europos, including texts in Greek, Latin, Aramaic, and Middle Persian, demonstrate the cosmopolitan nature of frontier society and the complex cultural negotiations required to maintain stability in contested regions. The military installations at Dura-Europos reveal the sophisticated defensive preparations that both empires maintained along their mutual frontier, with archaeological evidence showing multiple phases of fortification construction, weapons storage facilities, and troop housing that reflect the ongoing military tensions between Rome and Parthia. The famous House of the Divine Gadi and other religious structures at Dura-Europos show the religious tolerance that characterized both empires in their frontier regions, with Parthian, Roman, Christian, Jewish, and various syncretic religious communities coexisting within the same urban environment. The first major confrontation between Rome and Parthia occurred during the campaigns of Marcus Licinius Crassus in 54 to 53 BCE, culminating in the devastating Roman defeat at the Battle of Carrhae that demonstrated Parthian military superiority in open terrain and established the Euphrates River as the effective boundary between the two empires. Archaeological surveys in the region of ancient Carrhae have attempted to locate physical evidence of this famous battle, with some success in identifying probable battlefield locations and discovering artifacts that may be associated with the conflict. The Battle of Carrhae became legendary in both Roman and Parthian traditions, with Roman sources emphasizing the tactical innovations that led to their defeat, while Parthian sources celebrated the victory as validation of their military system and imperial legitimacy. The psychological impact of Carrhae on Roman military thinking was profound, leading to significant changes in cavalry organization, tactics, and equipment as Roman commanders sought to counter the Parthian advantages that had proven so decisive. The captured Roman standards from Carrhae became powerful symbols of Parthian victory and were displayed prominently at Ctesiphon, serving as diplomatic bargaining chips in subsequent negotiations and as propaganda tools demonstrating Parthian military prowess. The fate of Roman prisoners taken at Carrhae, according to classical sources, included forced settlement in eastern Parthian territories where they may have served as military colonists and craftsmen, though archaeological evidence for such settlements remains limited. The decades following Carrhae saw the development of a complex diplomatic relationship between Rome and Parthia that combined elements of mutual recognition, territorial agreement, and ongoing rivalry for influence in Armenia and other border regions. The Armenian question, which involved competing claims to suzerainty over this strategically located kingdom, provided a focus for Parthian-Roman diplomacy while creating opportunities for proxy conflicts that could escalate into direct military confrontation. Archaeological evidence from Armenian sites during this period shows the alternating influence of Roman and Parthian cultural elements, with architectural styles, religious practices, and material culture reflecting the changing political alignments of local rulers. The reign of Phraates IV, who ruled Parthia from 38 to 2 BCE, saw significant developments in Parthian-Roman relations, including the negotiation of territorial agreements, the exchange of diplomatic missions, and the establishment of regular commercial relationships that benefited both empires. The diplomatic protocols developed during this period, documented in both Roman and Parthian sources, established precedents for imperial interaction that would influence international relations throughout the ancient world. The exchange of exotic gifts between Parthian and Roman rulers, including Chinese silk, Indian spices, Arabian incense, and various luxury products from throughout both empires, demonstrated the wealth and sophistication of both civilizations while serving important diplomatic functions. The Roman campaigns of Mark Antony in 36 BCE, although ultimately unsuccessful, provided important intelligence about Parthian military organization and defensive capabilities while demonstrating Roman commitment to eastern expansion. Archaeological evidence from the region of Antony's campaigns shows the extensive logistical preparations required for Roman military operations in Parthian territory, including supply depots, fortified camps, and transportation facilities. The failure of Antony's invasion attributed. Thank you, Soul Traveler, for watching.